All right, let's take a trip back in time, about 2,500 years actually. We're going to listen in on a conversation between the Buddha and a wanderer. And trust me, this isn't just some old story. It's this incredible lesson on how to separate what's truly useful knowledge from what's, well, just useless speculation. And you'll see, it's a lesson about focus that might be more important now than it ever was. So let's dive right in.
So our story kicks off with this wanderer, a guy named Poṭṭhapāda. Now, he's a real thinker, but he's completely tied up in knots over this one massive question: consciousness. How does it even start? How does it stop? He's heard all these different theories, and he's just lost. So he decides to go find the one person who's famous for cutting through the confusion, the Buddha.
But here's the thing. When the Buddha shows up, it's not what you'd expect. He's not walking into some silent, meditative space. Nope. He approaches this hall, and it is just buzzing with loud, totally chaotic chatter. Poṭṭhapāda and his followers, we're talking hundreds of them, are right in the middle of this really noisy debate.
So what's all the fuss about? What are they all arguing over? Well, basically everything except the important stuff. They're talking about kings and armies, what's for dinner, the latest gossip, what the text calls unfocused talk. But the second Poṭṭhapāda spots the Buddha, he shuts everyone up. Just like that. He knows the Buddha has zero time for idle chatter, and it just sets up this amazing contrast right from the start.
And Poṭṭhapāda, he doesn't waste a single second. He basically tells the Buddha, hey, just ignore all that noise. That was pointless. Because there's a much, much bigger question that's been bugging him. A question that really all the deep thinkers of the time were wrestling with.
And here it is, the big one. The question that this whole conversation hinges on. How does perception cease? Think about that for a second. How does our awareness, our consciousness of the world around us actually stop? This was a really deep puzzle, and nobody seemed to have a good answer.
So Poṭṭhapāda starts explaining why he's so confused. He basically lists off all the competing theories he's heard. Some people say perception, or saññā in Pali, it just appears and disappears randomly, for no reason at all. Then there's the idea that the self, the atta, is what perception is, and it just kind of comes and goes from the body. And then, of course, you get the really mystical stuff, that powerful monks or even gods can literally pull perception right out of a person. I mean, it's just a total mess of conflicting ideas.
The Buddha just listens to all this very patiently, and then he just cuts right through all that noise with one simple, powerful idea. He says, no, it's not random. His answer is so direct, and for the time it was revolutionary. Perception, he says, doesn't just happen. It arises and it ceases for a reason, with a cause. And this is the key part, that whole process can be understood and even mastered through training.
So what's amazing is that he doesn't just offer up another philosophical theory to add to the pile. No, instead he lays out a practical step-by-step method. This isn't about what you should believe, it's all about what you can do and experience for yourself. It's a blueprint for actually training the mind.
And this whole method really hinges on one key Pali term, sikha. It translates to training or discipline. But the Buddha's definition is really precise here. It's not about gritting your teeth and forcing your mind to do something. It's more like a gradual refinement. It's about learning how to let go of a coarser, more agitated state of mind so that a subtler, more peaceful one has the space to arise naturally.
He explains this whole training process using these stages of deep meditation, which are called the jhanas. And the best way to think about it is like climbing a ladder of consciousness. So on the first step, you let go of your attachment to sensual pleasures, and this new, joyful perception arises. Then, to get to the next step, that joy has to settle down. You let go of busy thinking, and an even deeper state of stillness takes its place. See how it works? Each step up the ladder is a new, more refined perception, and it can only arise when the coarser one below it has ceased.
And this right here is the absolute crucial point. It's a chain of cause and effect. Letting go of one state of mind is the direct cause for the next, subtler state to arise. So it's not random, it's not magic, it's not some soul floating in and out. It's a natural progression of the mind, something that can actually be trained.
Okay, so Poṭṭhapāda is totally on board with this. He's satisfied. The practical answer about training the mind makes perfect sense to him. But his mind is still buzzing with questions. Saññā pivots. He shifts from the how of perception to the big, cosmic questions about the nature of reality itself. The stuff philosophers have argued about forever.
He starts asking about what are known as the undeclared points. He's like,
So, is the world eternal or not? Is the soul different from the body? What happens to a fully awakened person after they die? These are the ultimate questions, and for every single one of them, the Buddha gives the exact same answer. That is something I have not declared.
And that, of course, leads us to the next obvious question, right? Why? Why would someone who seems to understand consciousness so deeply just refuse to answer these huge, fundamental questions about reality?
Well, the Buddha's reason is just incredibly practical. He basically says that arguing about this stuff, it's just not helpful. It doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't lead to peace, it doesn't lead to wisdom, and it certainly doesn't help solve the real, urgent problem of human suffering. Getting lost in thoughts about whether the world is infinite is, for him, just a distraction from the work that actually matters.
And to really hammer this point home, to make it impossible to misunderstand, the Buddha uses these two amazing analogies, and they perfectly show the difference between useless speculation and a path that actually works.
So the first one is great. He says all this speculation is like a man who goes around telling everyone, I'm in love with the most beautiful woman in the entire land. But then you ask him, oh yeah, what's her name? What does she look like? Where does she live? And the guy has no answers. He doesn't know anything about her. He's basically in love with a vague idea, not a real person.
And that leads him to his most famous analogy of all. He says that debating these metaphysical questions is like building a ladder to a palace you've never even seen in a location you don't even know. I mean, just picture it. You're spending all this time and energy building a beautiful ladder, but you're just leaning it up against the clouds. It's a completely pointless exercise.
But the Buddha's teaching, he says, well, that's the total opposite.
It's not a ladder to some made-up palace in the sky. It's a ladder that's placed firmly on the foundation of a palace you can see, right here, right in front of you. The goal, which is the end of suffering, is real and tangible, and the path he teaches is the ladder built specifically to get you there. It's grounded, it's practical, it actually works.
So what is this real palace that he's focused on? What's the stuff he does declare? Well, it's the Four Noble Truths. He teaches very clearly, look, there is suffering, there is a cause for that suffering, there is an end to that suffering, and here is the path to get to that end. That is the problem he's here to solve.
And why only this? Why this laser focus? Because unlike all that abstract debate, this knowledge is useful. It's directly connected to the goal. It leads you toward peace, toward wisdom, toward the end of your own suffering. It's knowledge that serves a real, practical purpose.
And so, this ancient conversation leaves us with a question that feels incredibly modern, doesn't it? In our world where we're just drowning in information and constant debate, what's the real point of knowledge? Is it about having all the answers and building these complicated theories in the clouds? Or is it about finding a problem right in front of you, placing a steady ladder on the ground, and starting to climb?